The Senate GOP elected David Hann as its leader. He joins me now to discuss his vision for the caucus. Thanks for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
Senator, let's begin with the message of the Republicans throughout the campaign season essentially was balancing the budget without raising taxes, and this didn't resonate enough with taxpayers and voters. Why do you think so?
Well, there's probably a lot of reasons. We haven't spent a lot of time yet figuring out all the dynamics of this last election, but clearly the economic messages were overshadowed by lots of other things that were going on both nationally and here at the state. However, we feel very proud of what we did for the people of the state of Minnesota. When we came into the majority 2 years ago, we had a $6 billion deficit that we were left by the DFL majority. We are leaving with a better than $1 billion surplus, so we have left the state $7 billion better than when we came in, and we're very proud of that. I think for a variety of reasons, not least of which, I think when we look at the campaign finance reports, I think the amount of money that was spent, and a lot of it coming from outside sources, outside groups that were being used by the DFL and their allies, clearly has given them an advantage in terms of being able to communicate a message. Some of it we think may not have been entirely accurate, but nevertheless it proved to be effective, and in combination with the much higher turnout in a presidential election year and the dynamics with the presidential race was enough in the close elections that we had, and we had a number of them, I think was enough to turn those in the favor of the DFL this time around. So,
you mentioned dynamics. So what about the dynamics of the two constitutional amendments and other policy issues, social issues that were brought up? Do you think they played a role, and how much of an impact do you think they may have had on the outcome?
I think there are a number of issues in the campaigns, and they all probably played some role. It's hard to assess that without taking a look at that in detail. We haven't done that. I think there were, at least anecdotally, there were some races where people have said that they think the amendments were helpful to them, at least from our side, others where they think they were not helpful. We need to look at that. I know in my race, for example, the amendments did not pass, and the no votes outpolled me, and I was able to win, so there's not a clear sense of exactly where those things worked and where they didn't work for our candidates. But there were a number of other issues that came up in the course of the work that we did in the last 2 years that the way they were characterized by our opponents apparently were used effectively by their campaigns to cause our candidates to not win. We had a lot of discussion about education funding, for example, and even though the DFL enacted a very large education shift, they used that as something that we did and accused us of taking money away from education, even though that's really not what it is. So I think the combination of the resources they were able to employ and the turnout that was a result of the presidential dynamic, I think helped them carry a message that in my opinion wasn't entirely accurate, but seemed to resonate with the public this time around, and they won a number of close races.
And as you just said, carrying a message, you are now the man designated with carrying the message of the Senate GOP throughout sessions. So kind of describe for me, if you would, what you intend to use as kind of your style to negotiate, to work with, and collaborate with the DFL.
We've got a number of great members in our caucus, both returning members and new members, that all of us are going to be carrying the message. And our job is going to be to help the majority to understand that the people of this state are not uniformly behind the kinds of policies that the governor and the DFL are going to enact. Our job is going to help them to understand we will work with them where we think they are right, and we are going to be cooperative and help them pass the things that we think are in the interest of the people of the state. But where we think they are wrong, where we think they are off track, we're going to stand up and very vigorously point that out and say, this is not what the people of Minnesota want, and here's the better alternative. That's what we're committed to do, and we're going to do that very vigorously.
And the DFL has talked about the potential of new revenue. Is that an area that obviously you think would be the wrong direction? As a minority member, how do you vigorously get your message across?
Well, just as an example, we have new revenue. Since the February forecast, we've got $500 million of new revenue that has come in above our forecast, above what we have passed. So we would argue that the things that we've done in the budget, the structure that we have put in place, has been very helpful in generating additional revenue. You can get additional revenue without raising tax rates. Now, what the Democrats are committed to doing, the DFL is committed to doing, is raising additional tax burdens on the economy. We think that's going to cause harm to the productivity and the growth of this economy, and that's what they're committed to doing. We think that is wrong. You can get additional revenue into state coffers without raising tax rates, and we have proved that with the budget we have passed. So we would argue that you could get additional revenue. You don't need to raise tax rates and add burdensome drags onto the economy to get it.
Newly elected Senate Majority Leader-Designate Tom Bach, he says that he does think Minnesotans will support new revenue if they know that those funds are going to K-12 education in particular. Would your caucus support any new revenue at this point?
Well, as I said, we have seen new revenue come into the budget. I think if you're asking if we're going to support additional tax rate increases, we've not obviously had any meetings to discuss that, but I think it's very unlikely that we would. We have campaigned in opposition to adding additional burdens to the economy. We look at that as a potential drag on the economy. The economy is recovering, and as I said, you look at the performance of the revenue growth in this state since we passed our budget. It has outperformed what our budget called for. We don't think you need additional tax rate increases. We think we need more growth in the economy, and you don't get that by more burdensome taxes.
Senator, explain to me areas that you think there is room for compromise as we head closer to session.
Well, I think there are going to be some big issues that we face. Clearly, we've got to deal with the federal ACA, Affordable Care Act, and the issues surrounding the health care law. That is very contentious with members on our side. We will see how much outreach there will be on the part of the DFL and the governor to work with us. Frankly, there hasn't been a lot of indication so far that they really are interested in reaching out and working with us. We'll see. But I think that there has to be some coming to grips with implementing that law, and I think that's one indication. We'll see very quickly how interested they are in getting input from our side on this.
What about some reforming regulations and streamlining permitting processes? There was bipartisan work on this in past sessions. Do you see more room for improvement in these areas?
I hope so, and I hope there is work that we can join together with the Democrats on the energy issues as well. I think there is a need, I believe, that we send the signal to our economy that we are interested in reliable, reasonably low-cost energy production, and we need to do better at that. And I think there are some, at least on the DFL side, that share similar views to many of us in our caucus.
And Senator Tom Bach also mentioned that tax reform will likely be included. What would your idea of tax reform be if, understandably, his would be some sort of new tax revenue?
Well, again, I think that there are many on our side that are in favor of tax reform, a comprehensive approach of looking at our tax code, trying to simplify it, trying to make it more equitable, and I think there would be willingness in many of our members to look at trying to bring some reform to the tax code. I think, as in many things, the devil's in the details. Sometimes tax reform is code for tax increases. We need to take a hard look at those things, but I do think generally there would be an interest in trying to find a way to make the tax code more fair, if you will, maybe less volatile, and we'll see what we can do, but I think there's interest in working on reform.
And he was also looking at bringing in business leaders and asking them to come with ideas. Would you support some of those ideas if they are coming from business leaders, even if they don't necessarily mesh with your caucus philosophies?
Well, we don't think the business community is necessarily partisan, Republican, Democrat. Obviously they're not, but I did read, and maybe others did recently, opinion piece by the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce that has raised some cautions and some concerns. I hope that the new majority takes those into consideration as they do their work. I think all of us, Republicans and Democrats, want to see a strong economy. The business community is a big part of that. I think all of us are interested in working with them, and we are going to obviously be trying to help them do the best we can to create an economy or create an environment that allows the businesses in Minnesota to thrive.
So I guess my last question for you then, Senator, what is your expectation for this coming session?
Well, we're going to work as hard as we can to do the business of the people of the state. We look forward to working with the governor and the new majorities cooperatively where possible. We're not going into this with the anticipation that we can't work together. We know we can. Most of the issues that we deal with day to day in the legislature, as you know, are things that people agree on. There will be some things that we are not going to agree on. We know that, and I think our job then will be to vigorously point that out and help the public to understand that we as Republicans have a different vision, a different approach, and we'll try to make that known as best we can and offer alternatives.
Okay, well, as the new leader of the Senate GOP, I'm sure you will be on this program quite a bit. Thank you for joining us,
Thanks
Senator
for having
Hann.
me.